you, Gilles. So this is the process, the agenda for this first presentation. We're going to take a little time to go back and look over our second step. Then I'll present the fruit of this second step, and then, as usual, we'll, we'll present the next step. So, a few comments on this second phase, second step. Thank you very much, first of all, for your contributions. All the groups were answered on time. A small group gave us stuff a little bit later, but really everybody uh, respected the dates and the ways of proceeding. The the uh, the length and the content was good. The quality was good. You'll hear this in the upcoming minutes. And the contributions were around 3 elements that you wanted to communicate. So this makes the use of it very enriching. Don't hesitate to contact me if you have any problems, any technical problem. I'm available to accompany you in this process, in this way of doing things. And also, a little suggestion: if ever you desire to do this in terms of your small group, I mean, now you've gone through 2 meetings so far. You might the next time take a little time to evaluate at the end of your meeting. Evaluate to become aware of what helps, what doesn't help, what's easy, difficult, so that you can really internalize this process and make it yours. That you seek in terms of your small groups to how to clarify what's useful, and you can continue, or things you need to modify to enter more fully in the experience. So that's it. If you have any time, you could also take time for evaluation at the end in your small groups. So once more, just a reminder of the dates for the next phases. This work will have personal prayer, then time of sharing for small groups. I suspect not all the groups have decided your next dates. The date for the contributions into the system will be the 2nd of April. Because actually it's Holy Friday, Good Friday. So I hope you'll have time to do things before that. And our next meeting will be during the Paschal time on the first Friday after Easter. We'll be in another liturgical time, another period of the year. So the 2nd of April to the 9th of April. So, in terms of the fruits of this the second phase or step, a little reminder, first of all, concerning the process in itself, to tell you where we're at. So in this process of communal discernment, if you remember, we came back to the sources of the CRC to pick up the elements, the elements that we can base ourselves on to build something. So that was the first moment. The second time was dealt with reading and looking and hearing the signs of the times, the issues and challenges for religious life today, and open us up to the way in which the Spirit is working on the world and in the world, and invites us to commit ourselves. So that's the first 2 phases. The third one, you see, we're not going to add content to this phase. We're going to try and simply deepen what we have. We're not going to add another theme, but we're going to try to deepen what we've already looked at in terms of the steps there, so that we will look at the expectations that were expressed in the regional consultations within the CRC. There'll be a presentation made on that. And all this to reach the General Assembly intentions. So this is a quick return on what we have done so far. So the method that I used this time to listen to your contributions and to give you back the things to continue this work of deepening. So I took all the contributions that were in French and in English, that were translated, all those in French and English, and to obtain a compiling of all the groups in French and in English. And then, based on this contribution of all the groups, reading them, rereading them, allowing myself to be touched by this, I saw quite quickly that there were main themes that appeared in these contributions, things that came back very often, and that could be a kind of architecture in 6 themes. So I really saw, in terms of the contributions, 6 themes that were constantly repeated. And so the way in which to proceed was then to distribute all the contributions, to allocate the different elements that were part of the different contributions according to these 6 themes. And then after, with a second level of listening and analysis and looking at each theme, identify the sub-themes that were there. So there were major themes and the sub-themes. So I really organized the contributions, allocating them in function of these themes. And I found this image here, how I proceeded. We've taken the contributions from different sources. There were different colors in these themes in terms of the contributions. So in the same way that the last time, that was very impressive to see the level of convergence among the groups. The way in which to identify the themes also was quite quick, because in fact all the groups talked about the same things. So we felt that there was really something in common and very strong that appeared in the groups. So there's a strong signal that appears through prayer and reflection and sharing, because you could have gone all over the place. I mean, you could have had a whole diversity. It could have been all over the wall, but it could have been we could have had elements that were very different. But as in the last time, there's something that's very concentrated, rather. So this simplifies the analysis work and reflection work that follows. And so reflecting on these results with Gilles, we saw that the group has well received this grace that we were looking for in this second step. We're hearing the calls. We don't have a particular formulation of this yet. So we need to listen to what the Spirit is trying to tell us in order to gear or to orient the way in which we want to live consecrated life today. So we feel that really this is something that is appearing here, and it needs to be deepened by all the members. There was also in the voice which appeared, Gilles and I took time to listen to. We recontacted a certain person to go further, because listen, the voices that appear beyond the convergences and common points, it's also important in a communal discernment to try and hear these prophetic voices that could appear, and to find out what's being said and what this means and how this informs us and enlighten or modify even concerning the process. So we took this time to listen to the voices that emerge, and this contribution raised, importantly, the difficulty of language here. In a text, the Fratelli Tutti, the use of the word fraternal or fraternity, which in some linguistic contexts excludes. And so there's something painful that is experienced by some people, that this language seems to exclude and eliminates the presence of women or the recognition of women. And so becoming aware of this, we really saw that there's an attention to see how we use our words and how certain words could be felt, and particularly in this context. And we say it's received. It's a chance for the CRC to reflect on these questions and to consider this during our process, because it's in the difference to other religious conferences. We're a conference where men and women walk together and seek to live inclusively their being in church, and to carry this dimension of living as brothers and sisters within the church, and to carry this good news, prophetic good news, that is experienced between brothers and sisters, and that is what life is possible. So we wanted to look at the question of language, and it could be an issue. And so in the groups, in the contributions that you'll find in the document, of course, all the groups have used the text, the language is proposed in the text. The video of Kamachini and the text Fratelli Tutti, and also you'll see in the documents that are presented in the future that we didn't modify the text. We use the word fraternity or fraternal as is, but you're saying this. Listen to the way in which these words touch you for the rest of the process. So we're sensitive to this dimension for sure, and we heard what the group has sought to tell us, and we hope that this dimension of equality, of living between brothers and sisters, men and women in the church, be well understood during our process. So now we see themes. You have here the 6 themes that came out of your contributions that were used, and that were used as a point of reference. The first main theme was the mission. The statement that mission is within us. The mission invites us to be mission. The mission invites us to be missionary by nature. The religious life is missionary by nature. We are founded to be missionary. It's part of our statement, and it's a permanent mission. We're in a permanent state of mission. The mission doesn't stop. We are to the end of time missionary. So there's no retirement in the mission. You can be persons who are retired, but they still remain missionary in their lives. And this mission calls us to remain prophetic, to show the prophetic level of the religious life express itself facing today's challenges and issues. This charism, this fulfilled by being challenged by the issues that invite us to be creative, to respond prophetically. And also the religious have a lot to offer and contribute to the world. We're called to be the voice of the voiceless, and all this work of the mission of inculturation of faith. We recognize God already present at work. The God bearing fruit in this world, and we are aware of our intercultural societies and the dimension of interculturality which is present in the world, in our communities, in society. So the first point really is mission. Second theme, which appeared very clearly, is this understanding of the encounter, the theme of encounter. So to be in an attitude of encounter, of openness. This is already at the core of the religious life by its nature, to bring together persons who are very different to share a religious life. This encounter is incorporated and incarnated in religious life. It's first of all an encounter with God, who has told us to go on the road. We have an encounter with others, with ourselves, in our communities, and in the world. So there's a certain mysticism of living together that witnesses the possibility of building a unity respectful of the diversity. Second point was this encounter allows us to become artisans of encounter, to really build a just and inclusive society where rights are upheld and that we can live together as brothers and sisters. It's this encounter is an all-encompassing communion, which involves not just persons, but involves all creation, and which is the desire of Christ that all be one. That Christ has invited us to this unity, and the world should be built within Christ. So, third theme that was present here, a series of means, or ways of being, of proceeding, that also goes in the same direction. So, cultivating basic ways of being, of doing, first of all, concentrate on our being rather than the doing. To allows us to enter into our identity, our common identity, to commit ourselves in a deep contemplative listening, deep listening, which places us in a context of dialogue and discernment, to enter into the seeking of others, the will of God, the way in which we can go advance together. All this is done within collaboration, where we seek with others how to go forth. We're not all powerful. We are in with others to seek together this kingdom, this reality. Another theme that appeared strongly from the contributions, the whole issue of vulnerability, frailty. Recognize that we receive reality in the lowering strength of religious life, the not shutting down, but the diminishment of religious life. You need to recognize that there is a size and vulnerability of religious life at this particular time. But at the heart of this vulnerability itself, there's another theme that appears very strongly. It's the whole issue of hope, with this trust in God, who walks with his people, God who walks with God's people. The, the this hope which is present in the present today. We are invited to be present to the today. We have to live today what we're called to live, and we are made to be passionate in this. And something is being born at the heart of all this. It's really a birthing. We are ready to. God prepares something that will occur, that will be, and when we work and hope, we let go, and we allow ourselves to be open to newness by accepting to leave our security and comfort zones.
C'est aussi quelque chose qui revenait très fortement, cette idée de s'abandonner à cette
So this idea came back very strongly, to be open to the Spirit, to give the Spirit space. And the last theme that came out quite strongly, it was a call for collaboration inside the CRC, a way of living, recognizing diversity of their members as a richness, and also to depend more on this interdependence. We are together, we all need each other, we work together, we search together, and all this diversity is a reserve of wisdom. It's a pool of wisdom and strength to live what we have to live, and to live the CRC as a place that help us to live together. And also, I gathered a few elements as calls for the CRC. There are certain contributions said that the CRC maybe should be this or that. So there were ideas that the CRC for us is a vehicle, something that helps us to express this love. So this is a mean, And this is a notion that came back to this a forum, that the year sees as a forum, a place where we can talk to each other, and also is a place to support each other. And also, and it's a place that helps us to find our own voice and to really see what is true, what is not true, what is a source of life, what is not. So it's to help us to bring forth our voice. So these are the themes that came out quite strongly. And I made this exercise of this cloud of words. I mean, what one can see all the contributions in French and in English. What are the words that come out more strongly? And so here it is for the French. Reality, live in hope, oh God, encounter mission, world, etc. And the word cloud in English. So it confirms that the software for translation works. So this is those are the words and that express the content of that you express, but is a visual way of presenting them. So now I'm going to give the mic to Gilles, that is going to present the third step. And after we'll have some question and answers because we are giving quite a time of this. So if you have any questions, if I forgot something, so we have a moment for a Q&A session after this presentation, after Gilles' presentation.
Our third step, our third moment in this itinerary, as Laurence explained, is not going to involve offering you new material, but rather we're hoping to go deeper this month into the wisdom that's emerged from our discernment so far. What we want to do really is do what's called in the Ignatian tradition a repetition. That is, we want to return to the material that has already been given to us by the work of the Spirit, that has already emerged from our reflection and our prayer and our spiritual conversation. And we want to revisit it, not as a do-over. We're not simply trying to do it again, but rather we're returning in order to savor more deeply, in order to deepen our own communion with the work of the Holy Spirit, but also to draw from this emerging wisdom deeper and richer fruit. Lots and lots of images are possible. We could talk about distilling. We could talk about drilling for the diamonds that are within the material that's emerged, the texts and the sharing that you've done. I really love the image that comes from the constitutions of the Xavier community. It's an image from their founder, Claire Monestes, who, when she's speaking about the Xavier constitutions, tells the Xavier to receive the constitutions, to enflesh them, to digest and assimilate them, to chew them, and to draw honey from them. That's really what we're trying to do. We want to draw out the honey within the comb of what we're doing. The goal really this month is to move as much as we can in the spirit of what's already emerging in our sharing, from doing to being, from the calls that we are receiving as something that we are to do. We're trying to go within that to the call that we're receiving to be something, to who we are to be. So we're trying to move as much as we can from the image of doing many things to being something as religious life in Canada. And in light of that, we're then in a position, having drawn closer to an identity that we are aware of at the call of the Spirit, we're in a better position to then hear the practical elements that will be shared with us in April that have come from the consultations that the CRC has undertaken. So that's the desire this month for the process, that we would go in this direction of savoring more, of distilling, of drilling, of drawing honey, sweet honey from the comb, to use the biblical image, so that we can draw closer to understanding who we are called to be by the Spirit in this day. Okay, this is interesting. Try it over here. There we are. So a word before I go on to present the material for this month, just a word about our process. We're now halfway through our communal discernment process, and it's very, very clear from the feedback we're getting from the groups that our experience with the process is growing. Yes, people are becoming more comfortable with spiritual conversation, with communal discernment, with using the tools. That's all very, very true, and that's a good sign. It's certainly a sign, as Alain said at the beginning, of your generosity, your willingness to engage this process. Nevertheless, there is still a great variety of exposure to and comfort levels among us with Ignatian prayer in general. Not everyone has been exposed to Ignatian prayer in the same way, and with Ignatian communal discernment in particular. And so there are still persons struggling to understand what we are doing, even as experience is growing. And to be honest, that is a great challenge to us, to Laurence and I, as we accompany the process. So on the one hand, we have participants, members of communities who have been doing communal discernment for a long time and who have lots of familiarity with the process. On the other hand, we have people for whom this is literally the first time ever to engage in spiritual conversation in this way, or to engage in communal discernment in this way. And so if Laurence and I were accompanying a much smaller group in person, one of the things we would be doing is really trying to adapt to what's going on in the group. We would be in person, we would see people's faces, we would know what's going on, we would hear how people are struggling or not with the process. We don't have any of that in this case. And so we're grateful for the feedback. Our sense has been throughout that we have tried to err on the side of completeness and clarity in our presentations. And so probably for those of you who are more familiar with this process, that has been a source of some frustration. You know, the prayer sheets have been very detailed. Our presentations have tried to really take you step by step through the material. But we still think that erring on the side of completeness and clarity, given the limitations of not being together in person, the size of our group, that we'll continue doing that. However, it's important to recall another very, very important Ignatian principle from the exercises, which is that really the material we're giving you is not a recipe. It's not something to be followed lockstep. It's a resource. And so it's important that in your own freedom, as you engage with the Spirit, you make the tool your own. Laurence already suggested this when she suggested that your groups could do a little bit of a review of how your spiritual conversation is going, what's working, what's not. You really do have to do that also with the resources we provide you with, and especially with the prayer page, the reflection exercise. It's going to continue being very, very detailed, but please make it your own. Make use of it according to your level of experience and comfort and needs. It really is a resource and not a recipe. And so adaptation is very, very important. There is one thing I want to say, which is that there is one significant element to hold on to in this process, however you adapt it for yourself. There is one significant element to hold on to. The kind of communal discernment that we're engaging in really is for mission. And so it is oriented to trying to discover the good and beautiful thing that the Spirit is trying to call us to become. And so it is intimately tied to our desire. Cultivating the desire to respond to the Spirit by asking for the grace is really a significant element. So we'll continue to provide on the prayer sheet always a specific grace, a specific orientation of desire for you, so that everyone really has that sense of being grounded in the same, on the same path, in the same journey. With that in mind, what I'm going to do now is simply go through the prayer page for this month as you will be encountering it. The first three elements on the reflection page have always been about the dispositions, the preparation of our minds, hearts, and spirits, even our bodies, to the activity of reflection and discernment. And so there's a kind of funnel. And again, I apologize for those of you who are very familiar with this. I apologize if this is review, but I think it's helpful for people who may not be as familiar to understand what's going on underneath the actual elements that we present on the prayer page. There's a kind of funnel at the beginning where we begin really with a moment of becoming physically and emotionally and spiritually present to God here and now. We want to be grounded in that presence of God, in the encounter, as that word has been coming up again and again. And then we want to be grounded in who we actually are at this time, in the emerging wisdom, the place where we find ourselves. And so the second moment really invites us to be grounded in the truth of the moment. And then finally, asking for the grace is all about sharpening and quickening our desire for a generous response to the action of the Spirit at this time. And so think of it as a funnel that draws you more and more. It draws you deeper, but it also concentrates your desire to really dispose you to engage with the action of the Spirit through the instrument, through the tool of the reflection exercise. This coming month, we're proposing as scripture, the road to Emmaus. The past two exercises, our scripture texts have been more perhaps oriented to the intellect, to try to remind you of an idea or a way of being that God has had with us. Now we'd like you to take the time this month to really enter into the experience of the disciples as Jesus helps them explore and enter more deeply into the meaning of his life with them, because that's in fact what we're going to be doing with our own texts. And so to enter into that experience, which has been an experience within the church from the very beginning, that Jesus with the Spirit really does draw us more deeply into our experience, into the meaning of our experience of his life with us. If we can enter into that dynamic through the scripture, it disposes us very well then to take up the task of entering into our own cumulative experience of the past 2 months. So this month, we're proposing some very specific questions. the text that Laurence has compiled is about 15 pages long, and it is simply composed of your own responses. There's no synthesis or try. It's all what you have given, what you have shared. So 15 pages is a lot. And so I'm just going to start by giving you a practical hint. Again, if it's helpful, take it. If it's not helpful, get rid of it. But I have found for myself, when I'm trying to reflect with such a long text, that having a pencil in hand and doing a first read where I simply mark along the side of a paragraph or a sentence, or I underline what is engaging me more, what seems like a really rich idea, or what evokes a response, an affective, emotional response from me, what seems interesting. If I just go through that, or what confuses me, or what do I react to negatively, if I do that through the first read through, then I can go back and just focus and stay with a few things. As Ignatius says, when you want to go deeper, it's not having a great deal of things to reflect on that's helpful. It's savoring a few things deeply. It's drawing that honey from the comb in just those few places where there seems to be a richer vein of wisdom to mine. So if it's helpful, I would suggest that a practical thing you could do is do this double read through, read it a first time more quickly with a pencil or a pen to mark up what engages you more, what gives you more life, and then go back just to those things. And as you go back to those things, the questions that we're proposing would be things like, where do you notice parallels and convergences among the themes? Where do you notice continuities with our January discernment? Where are you surprised by new elements that invite you to deeper reflection? And as you notice those, and as you read and reflect on those, what moves you more? What gives you more energy? What awakens your love and zeal more? That word "more" is important here. It's a movement word. It's not a multiplication word, it's a movement word. It's an invitation, again, to go deeper. I want to say something in particular about what has emerged this month as a result of that prophetic voice that Laurence flagged for us among the results of the spiritual conversations. When a voice emerges like this, it's very important that we pay attention to it. There's usually, beyond the convergences and parallels and continuities, in these new elements, there is usually something to explore. And so, although there isn't a question in the prayer sheet about the use of fraternity and fraternal, I think it's important that we be attentive to it as we read this month. Again, in the Ignatian tradition, we might speak about doing a particular examen or a particular review. So my suggestion, and again, take it as it's helpful, my suggestion would be that on the second read through, if that's how you're proceeding, you take the time when you see the word fraternal, fraternity, really look at it in the context where it is. What does it evoke there in the material that's been given to us by our fellow participants? What does it evoke in me? What are some of the synonyms that could enrich my understanding of it? What are some of the blind spots that might be contained in that language in this place? I would even say, if you can play a little bit, and just do word association. What are the grace-filled words that I associate with fraternity and fraternal? Part of what we want to live, I think, and we saw this in January in the fruits of our reflection on the history of the CRC. We want to live I think that was definitely a call that was emerging in January. We want to live church together in a new and radical way that's inclusive. And so we have an opportunity here with this word to be very creative and imaginative and see how we can break free of its limitations while appropriating the call that it may contain. So I just invite you to that kind of creative, imaginative play with the words fraternity and fraternal as you read, to see whether there isn't something we can articulate that's part of our common desire, that can give specificity and flesh to our common desire to live church in a more inclusive way. The final question we proposed this month is really a summative question. As you take a step back from this kind of creative reading, this imagining, this being attentive to what moves you more, helps you go more deeply, take a step back and ask yourself, what emerges from my prayer as the deeper call to consecrated life in Canada today? A call to be something, a call that helps unify the themes and elements that are in our feedback, in our shared wisdom. Something that's perhaps the heart of the matter. That's what we're hoping, that's what we're aiming for in our work this month. And so that last question, I would really invite you to do it as a kind of taking a step back before you then move on to the usual conversation with Christ or Mary or founder or foundress, and the usual statement that's going to be the foundation of your sharing and your spiritual conversation. Our hope is that this exercise this month will really enrich our discernment, that it'll be that'll open up for us a deeper communion among us. And so I really look forward to the results that we're going to celebrate next month. And so at this point, I would invite people to, if you have practical questions about anything we've said about the process, clarifications that you need about the coming month, I'm going to turn off my screen now. And if you would just use the chat to raise any questions that you may have. Si vous avez des questions pratiques sur ce qu'on a dit, si vous voulez...
Any practical questions that you have, if you need more clarity on the task, on the different elements for the coming months, so please use the chat so we can answer your questions. Maybe I can answer to this one, that the 15 pages, it's only the fruits of January. In the fruits of January, it's in the PowerPoint that it is in the website of the CRC. So you have the fruits of step 1 that is presented as a PowerPoint that you will find on the website. And for in February, you find the text in a PDF text with the 15 pages. The movement that we try to propose is that you revisit quickly the different slides that come from January at the beginning of your reflection, and then you concentrate on the fruits of February. We don't ask you to go back and revisit in detail January fruit, but you just root yourselves at the beginning of the prayer on the slides on January, and then go forward in this repetition in February. So we were talking about Gilles, and we say the January contribution was giving the landscape what you were, and to be aware of this landscape, you and then use the February fruit to go deeper and further.
Thank you, Maggie. Veux-tu prendre ça, Laurence, ou voudrais-tu que je commence à répondre? Ah non,
Laurence, you want to
Raoul me demande,
Mario says that I would like you go back to the idea of deepening. What does deepening mean in our context?
il y aurait peut-être deux éléments à
Maybe there are two elements that we should
premièrement, cette notion de
underline. First,
déguiser
the idea is to
ou
sharpen
savourer
or savor
certains éléments
certain elements more than others. So when we are reading the fruit of our February exercise, to see what moves me more, what allows me to go further, what
rassemble pour moi
it gathers for me,
dans peut-être les autres thèmes, les autres éléments.
or all the different elements. It is this notion to kind of, and it's again the idea of Claire de Monastès is to draw honey. I don't know if that helps, but we want to start
À aller plus loin,
going further
aller en profondeur.
and deeper. I don't know, Laurence, if you want to add something. I feel that I'm kind of repeating myself.
Comme on le dit, enfin,
As
l'approfondissement,
we
c'est
say,
enfin, la manière dont
when
je
we,
l'entends, moi, c'est
the way I understand the deepening is that we are not adding new elements, but we look at what we already received, where we are more moved with. It's to really focus or where we feel that something is happening that allows us to articulate other elements in together. It's like a gravity center. It's like the heart of the call. If we could say it in a different words, when we're asking, what are you talking about? What would you say? It is this. That's what moves us, what touches us deeper. It's to find, to get there. If somebody asks us, what is it? So you say it, what it's the thing that moves you deeper, and doing it in a personal way. It's something that you experience it, and not only that, yes, I have these things to do, this I have to do. No, it's something that you discover like a deep call and to make it a way of being, and then to live it in a creative fashion.
Choses de cette manière. Donc avant d'arriver à cette phase de tiens, qu'est-ce qu'on pourrait faire? On pense que c'est important de s'ancrer plus profondément pour s'approprier davantage cette identité, cet appel qui est à la fois donné et à la fois quelque chose qui nous invite à avancer, quoi, qui nous oriente vers quelque chose.
Ça répond vraiment à
It really answers to what was emerging in the fruit of your own reflection, this call for going from the being to the doing, from the doing to the being. It's really trying to get as close as possible to an internalization, also to receive from the Holy Spirit what could be religious life in Canada today. Not yet the CRC, no, religious life. So what could be consecrated life in Canada today? What is the Spirit asking us to be today? Thank you, Mario. Mario says thank you.
Did people in English catch enough of that, or would you like me to repeat some of it in English? I'm not seeing any sort of massive wave of requests.
Ah, bonne question.
Good question here. So, are we the one who are moving this thing, who are moving these, this is God. So when I say that I see big convergence in the processes, and I think we need to welcome it. That's, you'll see the way in which things are allocated on these themes. I have taken all your contributions and all the elements. There's no element that was beyond or outside of that didn't fit into one of the, we talked about something completely different. So this convergence, I receive this as much as you do. We could have, based on everything that was proposed, based on the cardinal's speech or the text, the groups could have taken a stance or said things that were very, very varied. But we observed that things are harmonized. So the way in which we orient the process, you can see that we ask to pray for something specific, for giving specific tools, but all this is really in the service of the freedom of the spiritual experience. We're proposing a prayer file, spiritual conversations that are with a certain modality, but all this is in the service to try and bring out what came out in the prayer and which each of you have been able to share in your small group and what each group presents to us. So there's both on our side, there's a certain level of accompaniment and framing of the process because we have to go forth together. Our role, Gilles and I, is simply to give you some kind of formal structure that allows listening together and working and walking together. We create conditions for a listening of the Spirit, and listen to what the Spirit is trying to say to us through the word of each one, and also through the word of each small group, and through the word of the whole, of the totality. So we dare to believe that, and this is really the process of discernment here, that what is given to us by God as something to listen to. Nevertheless, afterwards, we have the whole work of assimilation to do and internalization to live this out and to materialize it, to make it more concrete. But we do this act of faith that God is talking to us through this prayer personally, and through this kind of spiritual conversation, and through the feedback from the big groups. There are two important encounter moments to give the answer to Chantal. There's two important moments in this process. It's your personal encounter with the Spirit, in your personal reflection. I mean, we don't have anything to do with that. As you know, it's between you and God. And so I dare to believe that the Spirit is at work in your encounter with God, and also in your spiritual conversation. So, as we've explained it previously, when you're attentive in the spiritual conversation to the moments where the conversation has more energy, is more vital, there's more communion, it gives you a desire to go forth, those are signs that, and this is the experience of the communal discernment and condition spirituality, that's where we recognize the place of the Spirit or the role of the Spirit. What we said in the first presentation, that the gifts of the Spirit are at work in the communion and the encounter of a group. So there's two moments, which are privileged moments of God's action. It's when we try to offer a framework. We seek to offer a framework, but we're not there. We're not there when you pray. We're not there when you talk to God. So that's where the action of the Spirit is seen. So I think that answers the question, I hope.
There's a question personally to me from Teresita Cambates. Should we be careful not to split being and doing too much? Absolutely. We do not want to separate them or split them in any way. And this is a really great question because in this process, we're not splitting them, but rather we're moving from one to the other in order to return. So at this very moment, we're asking you to move from these wonderful themes, to go deeper into them, to try to identify, in a sense, not what are we to do, but who are we to be. But that's really at the service of an eventual return. When we've appropriated an identity as religious life in Canada, we will be better able to then responsibly articulate what are we to do as religious life in Canada, and therefore what are we asking of the CRC. And so it's this movement towards from what to who, to get back eventually to what. And I'm being very francophone. I'm now seeing myself on camera and I'm realizing I'm being very francophone. I hope that helps, Teresita Cambrates.
So the question now, is it normal that all these reflections and responses all be so positive? Well, it's difficult to say something that it's all positive. I mean, because each group is different, each experience is different, we don't know. It's not as if it was a norm. What we observe simply is that with your group, is that in spite of the number of people, the number of participants, the answers converge. And that shows something that we need to hear and listen to. After that, it shows also that people commit themselves seriously in this process. It shows that the Spirit is at work in our lives. It shows that it comes confirm that we're experiencing something strong and that has meaning and it's strong and meaningful. But it's also the sign that discernment is happening, that there's a work of discernment that's occurring. It's when somebody goes forth in a personal retreat, a lot of things happen. Prayer is very rich. It's a sign that the Spirit is at work and that the person is entering very well into the movement, the call, but we can't extract from that something on the content itself. No, we simply welcome. We simply welcome the fruits that are given as being something that encourages us to go forth and that confirms us in our way of proceeding that we're experiencing at this particular time. I would simply say that up to now, it's like that, but it's been positive, but it's possible that something else will happen later on, which will give us another perspective, a direction. We shouldn't especially see, how can I say this?
Oui, alors on peut,
yeah,
on peut être...
I mean, we can give thanks for what's happening up to now, and then I, as accompanier, Laurence as accompanier, well, we're aware that there are all kinds of these things that can happen from now to May, and we'll live with them, with those things. If there's something else that happens, well, we'll encounter it then, that's all. So we remain really humble in all of this. We're receiving what we receive. We place ourselves in a situation to listen, to receive from one another, and we continue to receive. And therefore, we keep on walking. I think that we have to say that it's true that this experience is very different than our experience, ordinary experience, everyday experience. But what I'd like to say here is that, and highlight, is that in our ordinary discussions, in our way of being together in the world, in the social, political, cultural world, everything that we're used to see around us, well, the difference between this is that, and what we're experiencing is that we're asking you specifically to have an active listening and the word, an authentic word. It's not useless. These are not practices that we encounter normally outside of the discernment context. And one of the things that's very interesting is that when we participate in a communal discernment, is that with these simple tools of a more welcoming listening of the other and of oneself, and with a more simple word and more humble word and more authentic word as a reaction, there's all kinds of difficulties that we eliminate from our human relations, at political meetings or in our other discussions. And this is why maybe it might seem abnormal, but in fact, I would say that maybe theologically, this is what we're experiencing now. That is normal. That's what's really normal. It's not what's happening with outside of the discernment that's normal.
Discernement qui est normal. Absolutely, Elizabeth. Yes, that is very true.
We have to also note and remember that this group brings to discernment all this the energy and wisdom of the community members that are entering into this communion and reflection. We have an enormous support from the spiritual and the wisdom of all the communities that's coming together. All that is coming into this process, and it is distilled in the light of the gospel.
À la lumière de l'évangile, yes, absolutely, Elizabeth. That's exactly right.
Oui, on a
We welcome this privilege, actually, of having this group of leaders of religious congregations who are deeply touched by the charism of your community, by the mission that you're all experiencing intensely, and this level of reflection and prayer. I mean, really, we're really benefiting from all this. So the quality of this process shows the quality of the participants and the wealth and the wisdom, as we say, that is here in this group. Maybe the contributions are simply the echo of that wisdom of the communities.
Comme on dirait en anglais, going once, going twice. Thank you, everyone, very much. And I have actually enjoyed this question period very, very much. It's been wonderful to see the questions.
Oui.
And I can say the same. It was there were lots of dimensions that would take us deeper and further on the content, and then also on the way of doing things. So if you have any other questions that have come to you afterwards, so send us a message to Gilles and to myself. You thank to the great work of Jean-Michel. All the resources are on the website for the next step. So Jean-Michel is showing you. You can go and get all the presentations that were shown here today, and also the prayer sheet and all your contributions. Everything is well organized. And so in the name of the team, Gilles and I wish you a good prayer and continue listening to the Spirit, and let yourselves be guided, and let's go and discover what the Lord wants from us. And so we can already root ourselves in trust and in truth and so we can bear the best fruit for His glory and His joy and the joy and the glory of the world. So we wish you a very good Holy Week and all the celebrations. That is going to be quite special this year because of the context we are in, but is going to give us this grace that is the root of the Paschal mystery of our religious life. So We wish you a great encounter with the Lord in these days.
Merci Laurence, merci à Gilles,
So
merci.
thank you, Laurence, Gilles, and thank you to you all, and good continuation. And we hope to see you soon. Bye.